My name is Phil Christofferson. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of Riverton, and I'd like to welcome you guys here. I'd like to welcome you gentlemen here today. We have with us Mayor Mick Wolf from the City of Lander, Mayor Ron Warpness from the City of Riverton, and Mayor Scott Peters from the City of Shoshone. Or is that Town of Shoshone?
Town of Shoshone.
Well, we'd like to welcome you all. We're here today to discuss the 1% optional sales tax, which is on the upcoming ballot, and discuss the importance of that and basically get some facts and information out to the citizens so they can make a good decision about whether they should vote for this or not. So with that in mind, I have a number of questions. We'll start with a question to Mayor Mick Wolf. Why is the 1% tax needed?
We need to. Lander's streets were paved in 1965 and 66. They have basically had nothing done to them since then, so they are over 50 years old. And we do not have the money to fix them. We don't have the money from the state, we don't have the money from the fuel tax, we don't have the money from what little sales tax we get. We need this optional sales tax to fix our streets, fix our infrastructure. That includes water, sewer, sidewalks. We're not going to do a half job. If a street needs fixed, and there's old sewer or old water lines, we're going to fix those also, so that we do not have next year to dig up the street and fix something. And we need this money in order to do that. Now, if you want your street fixed, and if you think that the streets are bad in Lander or Riverton or Shoshone, then you need to vote for this, because this is the only way we will have the money to do it.
Okay, thank you. So what you're saying is that a street actually goes below the surface.
A street in Wyoming goes 6 to 8 feet down. That's where your utilities are, because they're freezing.
And so this tax would pay for repairing and replacing all of that infrastructure that's needed?
If needed.
Okay. Mayor Warpness, Mayor Peters, any additional comments?
No, I would certainly agree with what Mayor Wolf has said. The city of Riverton has 65 miles of streets, and we just do not have the money to perform the maintenance and whatnot that's needed. Our streets, I think, were last any serious paving was done in the 50s, and so it's just a huge problem that we just do not have the funding for it this time to do.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Peters, follow up?
I know in Shoshone, the issue that we're having right now is that our infrastructure is about 60 to 70 years old. So what we're looking at is just our basic needs. Right now, the town is currently about $3.5 million behind where we really should be when it comes to sewers, when it comes to roads. And also when it comes to roads, really we don't have paved roads in Shoshone, but the first step for us would be to fix the sewer issues that we're having when it comes to dilapidated 90-year-old sewers that are more or less still of the old kind of sewer when you're looking at a clay pipe kind of sewer. We need to get modern, and this will definitely help us towards that goal.
So even with streets that are unpaved, there's infrastructure below the streets you have that are in dire need of repair. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Question number 2. This will be to Mayor Warpness. Is there enough money in the current city and county budgets to do this work? Could there be other things cut from the existing budget that would allow the work to be done?
I don't know how it would be possible to cut enough money out of our budget to perform the extent of work that we need. I would not want to go down that road with, I think 85% of our budget is with paying wages and whatnot, and you would have to lay people off and et cetera. We have money that comes out of the general fund for our airport that I think is about $300,000 a year now that we're investing in that. And you could we've looked at everything we can, and I don't know where we could come up with the kind of money that this 1% optional tax will allow. I think it will generate about $1.8 million for the city of Riverton, and I just can't envision any way that we could cut that amount of money to make up for it for our roads. One figure that Mr. Eberkeit, our Public Works Director, came up with, I think, was in a very quick time period, he was able to come up with about $23 million worth of work that needs to be done on our roads. And so if this tax were to pass, it would be a step in the right direction, but it still isn't going to solve all of our problems. But
Well, and a part two to that question is, if the 1% does not pass, what would you need to cut from the budget in order to pay for the streets and infrastructure?
well, I think they would just continue on in the state of decline that they're in. We do the work that we can, and we budget as much as we can for our street maintenance and repair and whatnot. But if you look at the declining engineering costs for a road when it goes into that level of decline, it's much more expensive to replace a road than it is to put an overlay on it or to put a chip seal on it or something like that. And so I think it would just be in a state of degradation, another 10 years more of the same, and that's certainly not something that I want to look forward to or try to administer over.
So you can't cut enough staff, police officers, or staff in order to make up for this difference?
We have our city administrator here, and maybe he has some secret up his sleeve, but I haven't heard it yet.
Okay. Mayor Wolf, any comments?
We discussed that this morning on how we could cut. The last 2 years, the city of Lander has, when somebody retired, we have moved everybody up, and we have not replaced the person at the bottom because we have seen this coming. Now, the governor says we have an 8% deficit minimum next year. We're going to have to cut 8%. Now, you asked about the police department. The police department runs 24/7. There is no time off. You cannot cut police officers and still have coverage, period. Our street department is at a minimum. Our water department is at a minimum to make the coverage that's necessary that DEQ and EPA requires for water, etc. We have cut all them in the last 2 years, trying to prepare for this. Mm-hmm. There's nothing left to cut. All we will do is repair. If this doesn't pass, all we will do is try to repair the worst streets, patch the holes, patch the potholes. That's all we can do.
Patching the holes within the holes.
That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Peters, any comments?
When it comes to cutting, with our budget in Shoshone, we're at a bare minimum as it is. We don't have excess in our budget when it comes to, we have a limited budget to start with, and everybody, when it comes to employees, really it's not an option for employees because we need that bare minimum. We're at the bare minimum now just to make sure our water systems are up, make sure our basic maintenance department's up, that we do have our policing. So really when it comes down to is we're in the same situation as we don't have the money. We're already, we've slimmed down on everything we can, and even with our small budget, we don't have any excess to start with and very little play. The only way we would, if emergency would come up, everything would be a patchwork. If it came up to an emergency with our budget in Shoshone, we wouldn't have a choice. It'd have to get turned over back to the citizens and the water bills, and that's the last thing we want to do.
So the water bills would have to be surcharged in order to pay for it?
Yes, it would have to go up, and that's what we try to avoid, especially in a smaller community. It's not high. Our average medium income is not the highest. It's working families that are having a hard time day to day to get by in the first place. So we're trying to keep everything at the lowest to help them. But if anything ever broke loose and we did have a major issue, we wouldn't have a choice. We'd have to put it back onto the citizens that way, and that would be a lot bigger hit than just a subtle with the 1%.
I think one thing that people don't realize sometimes is that we have what we call enterprise funds. And the monies that are in those enterprise funds right now, I think we're running about 18.5% reserves. And that's wonderful. It's a responsible way for us to do business, but we can't take the money out of those enterprise funds and use them for street repair. If they're in the water fund, they have to stay in the water fund. If they're in the sewer fund, they have to stay in the sewer fund. And, you know, so our hands are kind of tied in some of these areas. And the streets budget comes out of the general fund. And so it seems like it's the, whenever any of the Parks Department or something needs another piece of equipment or something, why a lot of times it'll come out of the general fund. And it's a diminishing return there. It's so it's interesting when you get into it. I know that.
In Wyoming, the taxing authority is at the state level. At the local level, what ability do you have to raise funds for something like this? What options are there available? And I'll leave this open to anybody. It looks like Mayor Wolf's about to.
This is, I'm just going to read this right here. It says, currently state law does not allow municipalities to level a tax on themselves. They must work together with all citizens in the county as well as the county commissioners. In some counties, such as Fremont, it is very difficult to get an agreement. Fremont is one of 3 of 23 counties that have not imposed the 1% tax on themselves for this reason. The last 1% tax that all citizens of Fremont County agreed to was a capital facilities tax that allowed for the construction of new senior citizen center in each municipality in the county. We are not allowed to tax.
So
State law.
the only way that you can pass this 1% optional is for the entire county to come together and pass it.
The entire county has to come together.
That basically means the citizens have to step up and be responsible for their own government by passing this tax.
That's
Exactly. It's come to the point where we're going to have to help ourselves. The federal government is trillions of dollars in debt. The state government says we're going to have to reduce by 8% next year minimum. It's time for us to step up and do something for ourselves. Take responsibility for our own communities.
And that's what this 1% does. It lets us take responsibility for our own community.
Yes, it helps.
Okay. One of the concerns that a lot of the citizens have is that the 1% is an optional tax that could be used for anything. What guarantees are there, or what assurances can you give that this will only be used for streets and infrastructure?
Well, when we were putting this together, FCAG, the Fremont County Association of Governments, which consists of the mayors of all of our 5 municipalities, with the exception of Hudson. They're not a member, but I've talked to Mayor Hammond over there, and he's very supportive of this tax as well. But the FCAG came together and literally I signed a blood oath that it would only be used for this infrastructure, water lines, sewer lines, and streets. And we're dead serious on that. We brought it before the county commissioners, and the county commissioners signed on board as well that they were supportive of it if it was only used for infrastructure. Now, this is the first time that I can ever remember that we've got unanimity across the county on one issue, on an issue that's needed by all of us. And we recognize that legally it goes into the general fund, and I suppose that it could be possible for a municipality to say, well, we were just kidding, we're going to use it for something else. But I can assure you from my perspective and the other mayors that that is not the case. This is only going to be used for infrastructure, and that's it. And I don't know how else to speak with more emphasis on that. I will let the other mayors speak for themselves, but I think we all are in agreement on that.
And one thing I might add is that every city council has passed a resolution saying that that's all it will be used for.
That's correct.
Every city did that. And now in Lander, the city of Lander will place all funds in a separate account designated for this purpose. Additionally, any projects considered by the council must first be recommended by a Land or Citizens Committee. Now, we do have a list. We want them to look at it, a citizens committee to look at it and see if our list of priorities is what they want. And our separate account will be open to anybody who wants to look at it at any time. It'll be full transparency.
Okay, thank you.
We're doing the same thing in Riverton, so.
Mayor Peters?
Shoshone's the same way. Our council unanimously approved it. What we'll do is we'll have it into a separate account, the same as Lander, and then we'll have a committee together of citizens that will be more or less an oversight for us to make sure that, down the road, if the future council ever wants to do anything that wasn't what we've promised, we have somebody to hold them accountable. It's not only transparency, but there's also accountability for us to keep our word.
Okay, now, I have been told, and I don't know if this is true, you can help clarify this, that this is the first time in anybody's memory that a resolution that is worded the same has been passed in all communities of the county. Is that true?
As far as I know.
I believe that's accurate, yes.
Yes.
That is historical. That's amazing. Of course, councils will change, mayors will change, but can you right now make a commitment that as long as you are in office, you will see that these funds are used for nothing but their intended purpose?
I will make that commitment right now.
I certainly will. Absolutely.
I will too.
That's a strong commitment. I know if the other mayors were here, they would make the same. If the tax is passed, and for some reason it is not used for its intended purpose 4 years, 8 years down the road, what can the citizens do about it?
This tax is a 4-year tax. It will come up on the vote every 4 years. If it is not used as it is intended, the citizens can vote it out.
Can they vote anybody else out?
They certainly can vote the mayor and the council that would allow that to happen out. I don't think there's probably any legal action that could be taken, but I just can't envision, knowing the integrity of the mayors that we have across the county and the county commissioners, that any of us would ever allow that to happen. But I suppose if you're cynical enough to think that it would, why?
So the citizens control this at the ballot box.
Well, and a lot of us grew up with old-fashioned ideas. We were taught old-fashioned ideas that say if you're going to do something, you do it. And that's how I feel. If I say I'm going to do something, that's what I do.
Yes.
Mayor Peters, any comments?
Well, not only can they should. They should hold us accountable for what we say and our word. And if anybody, I know it won't be me, but if anybody ever backs off and does something other than what we've promised here, the citizens should hold us accountable. Not if, they should.
Absolutely, that's their obligation.
That's right, and that's what the citizens group is all about too, so that people that are worried about that step up and be willing to serve on that citizens group to hold our feet to the fire on it.
Okay. We covered this briefly, but I'd like to ask again, and we'll start with Mayor Peters this time. Who will decide what roads are fixed and what order they are fixed?
It'll be the town will make our recommendation of what the worst areas we have, and then our citizens committee will get together and they will be the final decision on recommending to us which roads need to be done.
Okay. Mayor Warpness?
I think that will be the same process that we will have. Obviously, if there's a water line under a street that needs to be repaired, the citizen wouldn't be aware of that, but our engineering department and whatnot would be able to make that recommendation and put that information into the equation. You don't want to put a new street on something and then come back 2 years later and replace a water line or a sewer line. That doesn't make any sense. So it's a cooperative effort, between the city and its staff and the citizens on their side, but we're certainly not going to be running the show, if you will. This is something that the citizens will be heading that up, chairing that, and so.
Okay, Mayor Wolf?
We have a preliminary list of severe street needs. I have 12 streets here listed in alphabetical order. I'm not going to name them all. This has been put together by our Public Works Department, and it will be reviewed by a citizens committee. And they can go look at all these streets, and if they want to change it around, and they can work with the Public Works, our Public Works Service, and we'll change it around. A lot of it's going to be citizen input.
Okay. Thank you. Again, this next question, we touched on it briefly, but will the citizens have the opportunity to vote on this tax again in the future, should it pass this time?
It comes up every 4 years, regardless of whether we want it to or not. It comes up every 4 years. It's by state law.
So this will be on the ballot every 4 years?
Yes.
It will be on the ballot the next time. If it's voted down, then it will go away until it's brought up again through this process, is my understanding.
He's correct. Mayor Wortmus is correct on that. If it goes away, it's gone until we do it, until somebody else does it again.
Okay. In today's economy, it can be very difficult for young families, senior citizens, anybody raising a family. Will this tax raise the price of food or anything else?
There is no tax on food in Wyoming.
So
it will raise the tax on, you buy a new car, you will pay the sales tax, you'll pay another penny. Most anything else that has a sales tax, this will affect.
but cost of food will not be affected?
No, food is not included in this period.
Unprepared food.
Unprepared food. Now,
Yeah.
if you go to the restaurant, yes, you pay a sales tax.
Yeah.
So most of the families that are struggling, when they go to Safeway or Smith's,
Will
Walmart
not be
to shop,
affected.
they won't see that cost.
The Department of Revenue has prepared a sheet that has 49 sales tax exemptions on it, and most of those exemptions are dealing with agricultural and whatnot, but if whatever is happening now is taxed, then this 1% tax also will be added onto it. So rather than 4 cents, you will then pay 5 cents on it. But
Well, that leads into my next question. Should a local farmer or rancher need a new piece of equipment, will this raise the price of that new piece of equipment?
if he's paying for it at this time, then yes, it would increase it. But as I indicated, most of the exemptions on here are agricultural related. And right now, if he were to buy a tractor to use on his farm, he doesn't pay sales tax on it anyway. And so this 1% additional is not going to make any difference to him. If it's something that he's using part-time for a commercial venture and he's having to pay 4% tax on it now, then he will have to pay an additional 1 cent tax on it. So if you're being taxed now, then it will increase at 1 cent. If you're not being taxed, no change.
Okay, so
It says here for farmers and ranchers, ingredients or components used in manufacturing, processing, or compounding livestock, feed, seeds, bulbs, fertilizer, infrastructure, transportation, or raw farm products, power or fuel consumed in manufacturing, processing, or agriculture, power or fuel consumed in generating motive power by a transportation business. There's a whole list of things here that farmers and ranchers are exempt from.
so
And that's available from the Department of Revenue, and I'm sure it's on the internet,
so there's no sales tax on
those things.
to the agricultural
And
providers
there's
or
also
the
more here.
manufacturers.
There's more here, I'm just not going to go through them all.
Yeah, we have copies of this for anyone that would like it. Just stop by City Hall and we'd be happy to make them a copy of it. So, and all of this information is available to the citizens that are interested in it. That's our role, is to get that information out to the public.
We have
I'm
mailed these in our water bills, and they're fact sheets. Now, we have had some problems with this. We've had people call and ask, hey, you're promoting this. This does not say one way or the other how you're to vote. This simply gives nothing but the facts,
Which is what we're trying to do here.
which is
bring
what we're
out the
trying to do.
facts.
That's correct.
Exactly.
In your opinion, why is it important that this tax be passed? We'll start with Mayor Peters.
I believe it's important for the town of Shoshone and our future. We need to have an alternative source of income without having to rely on outside sources all the time to help us. And that's ultimately what the position we're in Shoshone right now. We don't have the budget or the resources to be able to fix a lot of issues when it comes to the sheer amount of money that this requires to build our infrastructure back up to where it needs to be. This is important because, you know what, in a way, we take back a little bit of, you know, the ability to take care of ourselves here. And not only is it good for the town, it's good for the people. I mean, this is going to go to making sure that the sewers work properly, that, you know what, we do get paved roads, that, you know what, we don't end up falling down. We might be a small town, but, you know what, we need the amenities the same as the bigger towns, and this is going to help us get there.
Thank you. Mayor Wolf.
Other than barking dogs, one of the largest complaint we get are the streets. And if you're not willing to help fix the streets, if you're not willing to put that extra penny out, then quit complaining.
Mayor Warpness.
I would just say that it's our responsibility as citizens to help pay our way. You know, we use the streets, and my parents and grandparents and whatnot have worked their lives to make our community what it is, and for us to allow things to just go to pot, if you will, doesn't, you know, that's not the way that we should do things. And we have an opportunity now, and it's a rare opportunity, I think. As we pointed out, this is one of the few times where everyone in the county, as far as the leaders are concerned, are together on this particular issue. And it's a great opportunity for us to step forward and get some help on a basic need that all of our citizens need. It's, you know, the other thing is if our community goes down to Cheyenne and asks for a CDGB grant or an SLIB grant, one of the implied questions they ask is, are you taxing yourself the 5th cent? And we have to say no. And they say, well, why are you coming to us and asking for our money then if you're not willing to help yourself? And that's a hard, you know, thing to, you know, to admit that we're not willing to pay for ourselves, but we want your money to pay for us. Mm-hmm. And that's not the way I do business, and I don't think our city should do business that way either. So,
and one thing I would like to add to what Mayor Warpner said about our forefathers doing this. My father was mayor when Lander streets were paved. Mm. And I would like to, my legacy would like to, I would like to have, well, he did them, I repaired them. It would be kind of nice.
A few more questions, and then we'll be done. Why would a small town such as Shoshone or Pavilion or Hudson vote for this? The total amount of money doesn't seem to be a great amount. What is the benefit?
Well, the first correction, it is a great amount of money. When you compare it in the difference of, if you look at it and say, well, yeah, well, you know, this town, Riverton's getting whatever, it's a whole lot more than, you know, 100,000, 200,000 that Shoshone will get. But if you take that in comparison to what our needs are and what our budget is, that's a great amount of money. So to say it's not a whole lot and I wouldn't vote for it because it's not a whole lot of money, you know, that's a wrong way of thinking. You know, in this day and age and at the ground level that I see it, any amount of money is a lot of money for us. And this is a lot of money, and this will go a long way for us.
Does this, would this amount of money allow a small community to obtain further grants and use this funds as matching funds?
Yes, they will. A lot of the grants that we get through like the SLIB, the State Land Board, all require a match. And now, and lately within the last year, they're requiring more of a match. So when it comes to getting money now, the town has to come up with a certain amount. Like this year, we had a SLIB grant for $250,000, but they required that the town of Shoshone come up with at least 50% match. Now, it's great, the money's there, it's available for us, but we don't have $125,000 to put up for that match. Now, if the 1% went, that would allow us and give us that money to meet that match, and then that 125,000 would turn into 250,000. So it's not just if you look at it, it's not just the amount of money you're seeing on paper saying that the 1% will bring the town of Shoshone $110,000. What you need to consider is that we'll take that $110,000 and we use that as match when it comes to grants to get a lot more money. So it ends up multiplying, sometimes tripling. So just that amount can turn into $500,000, $300,000, and then it becomes a large amount of money, and it also we can get a lot more done with it.
And I think what you need to understand, what the voter needs to understand is when he says that it's being used for a match, yes, you're getting more money from the state, but that money that you're using for a match does go into the infrastructure. It's not going in general fund, it's not going over here, it's going back into that infrastructure. It's used to get more money, but that money, that 100,000 or whatever it is going into that infrastructure, like we said it would, like he said it would. And I think the voter needs to understand that.
The other thing is the monies that's being generated, we estimate about 30% of it is being paid for by the traveling public that comes through. So when people come through Riverton from up the basin and they go out to the casino and whatnot and stop at the one of our restaurants or stop at the Walmart or whatever and spend a few bucks, why that money will go in and help pay for this. So it's not just the citizens of Riverton. If you just had a property tax or something like that, why it would only be the citizens of Riverton that would be paying for it, or Lander or Shoshone. This way, everyone that comes through our communities will help us fix our infrastructure. So it makes the most sense. The other thing is, I think, and I haven't pursued this, but I would think if it is a small amount of money, like Pavilion, I think is going to get about 42,000, if I remember. They have a large project that they want to do. They could rat hole that money, I would think, for a year or two. They don't have to spend it the first year until they get enough for the match for the project that they want to do. And so it gives you a lot more flexibility, where the way it is now, there's no flexibility and there's no income. So it's...
Okay, thank you.
And it's, as Mayor Warpness did say, it has been figured that 30% of the optional will come from tourism.
That's a big
that's
percentage.
a pretty good chunk.
That's a huge...
Well, one of the things that I've also heard from citizens is that we already have 4%, and that should bring a lot of money back to the community, but I don't think they quite understand what the breakdown is of that 4%, and then how much the additional 1% will bring. Could someone explain how that works, how much the state takes, and what the percentages are?
It says how much money will the one optional tax raise. It expected the tax will raise $7 million per year countywide, or approximately $1.3 million per year for Riverton projects and $3.4 million for Fremont County projects. This amount will be divided among 6 municipalities and Fremont County based on population. Riverton gets the Fremont County, the county itself, gets 49.1%. They get a half.
That's of that's of the additional 1%.
Of all taxes, of all of it.
Okay.
If it passes of the 5%. The county will get the 49.1%. Riverton will get 26.5%. Lander 18.7%. Pavilion 0.6%. Shoshone 1.6%, Du Bois 2.4%, and Hudson 1.1%, and this is all based on population.
Okay.
The way that it currently works on the 4% that we have now, for each dollar that's collected and sent down to Cheyenne, Cheyenne takes 70% right off the top.
So of $1 in taxes that gets sent to Cheyenne, 70 cents of that $1 stays in Cheyenne.
That's correct. And they send 30 cents back to the county, and then the county divides it up based on those percentages that Mayor Wolf has just described. And so Riverton, out of our 30% 1% or 30 cents, we get 26.5% of that, which is about 8 cents out of each dollar that's sent down to Cheyenne. On the 1%, if it's passed, we'll send $1 down to Cheyenne. They will take 1 cent and then send 99 cents back to the county, who will then divide it up based on population again. And so out of that dollar, we'll get 26.5% of 99 cents.
So this 1%
So it's a huge difference.
brings more into the county or into the cities than the 4% sales tax.
Several times more.
Because the state keeps 70% of
That's
that
right.
4%.
And we don't have a state income tax in Wyoming, but you could look at the way that they're taxing us now as a state income tax, I guess.
Okay, one final question, and then I'll ask for closing comments from each of you. But why not do a capital facilities tax instead of the optional 1%? Mayor Wolf?
We discussed this at great lengths. A capital facilities tax, we would have to, we have this list here of 12 streets. It would, say it came up to $20 million, and that's just Lander. Riverton, say they came up to 30 million because they're larger. The rest of them, millions of dollars. So say we're going for a capital facilities tax of $80 million. Nobody's going to pass that. And we don't know if that's going to do it. We don't know. A capital facilities tax will raise, we have to figure out exactly what this is going to cost us. We can't do that until it's bid out. We don't know what the bids are going to come in, high, low, in between. If we have the optional, after a year we know exactly how much we have. We can bid out a street, and that we figure that will do, and do it. Capital facilities, we don't have a clue. Next year, we'll know how much we have. We will bid out another street, and it will keep going for 4 years, and then it will come up again for election, for the taxpayers to say, well, did they do what they said? Are they doing what they said they would do? Is this worth the money? The optional works so much better for us than the capital facilities.
Okay.
The other thing is the optional or the capital facilities tax, you would have to give a legal description of every street that you're going to repair. The width of it, the length of it, the whole 9 yards. The ballot initiative alone probably would run 30 to 40 pages. And I don't know of anybody, myself included, that would sign on to, this ballot initiative of that length. It just isn't going to happen. So we took a serious look at the difference between the two, and we've always, for any tax that we've been able to pass, has been a capital facilities tax. We've never had a local option tax passed, but for the reasons that Mayor Wolf pointed out, it just wasn't something for these projects, something that would be viable. And so.
Mayor Peters?
It was well said.
Okay. I would like to clarify one thing. An optional sales tax that we're proposing, that is being proposed now, it comes up for a vote every 4 years, correct?
Correct.
If you pass a capital facilities tax, how often does that come up for vote?
It comes up to vote once, and when that amount is raised, the capital facilities tax goes off. Period.
So,
Now, that's what we did with the Senior Citizen Center. We knew approximately what we would, all the communities got together, and we passed a capital facilities tax for senior citizens. We knew what it was going to cost. We had an extra for an endowment fund, and when that was raised, it was gone.
so to clarify, if you were to go to the capital facilities route, you would have to analyze all of the streets, determine the cost, send them out to bid so you got the cost in advance, then put that on the ballot initiative, pass the capital facilities tax for a law, which would stay on until all of those projects were complete. If the projects were all completed, it could be 10 years, 20 years, or longer until that amount of money was raised.
Actually, you would have to raise the money and get the money before you could even go out to bid with it. If you could get the voters to go through that 30-page ballot.
So the most controllable option is the optional 1%.
That's correct.
Because
Correct.
the voters control that every 4 years.
Correct.
When we were discussing this with the county commissioners, Mr. Pendleton, Dave Pendleton, their roads engineer, he came up with $73 million worth of work that needed to be done. And he made the statement that if we don't get a different revenue stream, some way to pay for this $73 million worth of work will not get done. Now that's in the county. So if you live in the county and you want your culvert fixed, or you want your bridge fixed, or your roads fixed, you know, this is the only way that I can see to get it done. And I'm sure that there will be people that say, well, I voted for the darn thing, but they haven't fixed my road yet. Well, there's a lot of roads out there. They've got something like 960 miles of roads in the county. We only have 65 miles, so we're doing good. But Shoshone doesn't have quite that many. So.
We're working on it.
Yeah, we're working.
Okay, are there any, I'd like to hear closing comments, so any final thoughts? We'll start with Mayor Peters.
Well, what I would ask people to do is to look through the tax word. I mean, it's universal. Anytime you talk about tax, people always think of something bad. I would like people to understand that this is a good tax. The 1% is good, and the reason why the 1% is good is because it's for us. This is a transparent tax. So if you think of tax in a bad sense, this is transparent. We know where it's going. We know it's accountable, and we guarantee you that it is. This will help us. This will help us in our communities. And that's
Thank
good.
you. Mayor Warpness.
The one question that I've had the most difficulty in dealing with as Mr. Weaver and I have been going around giving presentations is the feeling that we're just working on the old Daisy Cleaner property on Main Street, and we're looking at the possibility of making that into a small city park or something. And I've had people say, well, if you've got money to waste on that darn park, then put it on your streets, and we don't need this tax. Well, the amount of money that the city has invested in that piece of ground to this point will do about half a block of street rebuild. And so, but the argument is, are you being doing good with the monies that you do have? And I kind of compare it to an individual that's got a beautiful home, but it needs a new roof on it, and the roof was going to cost $10,000, okay? And the family says, well, we really can't afford the roof. But then the wife comes to the husband and says, well, I know we can't afford the new roof, honey, but I sure would like a new living room chair for our living room, and it's only going to cost $200. Well, we can afford the $200 for the chair, okay, as the analogy, but we can't afford the roof. And so we're trying to do everything we can in our community to make it a place that we all want to live, to make our environment as beautiful and nice as it can be with the resources that we have. And so but as far as the amount of work that needs to be done on our roads, we just don't have a prayer of having that kind of revenue. When the legislature took the tax off of food, okay, that hurt our revenue stream, and they did not replace that money. When they capped our mineral severance royalties that we used to get as the mineral severance royalties went up, why, we would get an increase as well. They capped that, so we lost that revenue. But they didn't cap the increasing costs, and so we're caught between those two situations, I guess. So. I don't know if that makes sense to people, but we're doing the very best that we can with the resources that we have to improve our communities, and I just hope people that will trust us.
Thank you. Mayor Wolf.
Tax is a nasty word, but I would ask that all the voters get the facts. Don't just worry about, just don't vote against it because it's a tax. I don't want to pay it either, but I know the necessity in doing it. The only way that we're going to be able to be a nice community and to remain where we are is to fix our community and our infrastructure. Nobody worries about the infrastructure until they get up in the morning and can't flush the toilet because there's no water, or it runs back on you because it's plugged, because it's old. We need to fix it. And I would ask all the voters to please get the facts before you vote. Don't just vote against it because it's a tax.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. Excellent job.
Sailing away to Key Largo. Here's looking at you, kid. Missing all the things we did. We can find it once again. How long? Just like they did in Key Largo. Honey, can't you remember? We played all the parts. That sweet scene of surrender. When you gave me your heart. Please say you will. Play it again. 'Cause I love you still. Maybe this can't be the end. We had it all. Just like Bogey and Bacall. Starring in our own late, late show. Sailing away to Key Largo. Here's looking at you, kid. Missing all the things we did. We can find it once again. I know, just like they did.